Hi, thank you for your question. I knew my son was autistic at almost exactly 18 months old. So the main thing that we all noticed when my son was like, an infant and a toddler, is that he was just very unresponsive. What I mean by that is he did not make any eye contact. You could be screaming his name and he would not turn around. Because of this, everybody, including his doctors and specialists and everything, thought that he had hearing loss. His medical chart actually still has it in there as hearing loss. Because they thought it was his hearing, they set him up, with a hearing test. And he failed the first one, and they said what we thought, that he had hearing loss in one ear. But during this time, he also was getting evaluated, like developmentally, like, with early intervention and stuff. And they started pointing out that they thought he could be autistic or maybe have some sensory stuff going on. So they referred us to, I think it was a behavioral specialist, and he was initially, they did kind of like, I don't know what you would call it, like a soft evaluation or something. Like he was too young to be diagnosed, but they did sort of an evaluation. And she said, she thought that he could be autistic, and I was very combative about it. And I'm just gonna be real, like, I was very uneducated, when it came to autism at this point. All that I did know was from stuff like Autism Speaks and shit like that, you know what I mean? So I was just very ignorant, in that area. I took offense to it. I was, really angry. Obviously, it's not her fault, but I was angry. Because to me, my son potentially was going to get a diagnosis that there was no cure for, you know what I mean? Obviously, I know better than that now, but back then that's what I was thinking. Is I wanted my son to have a diagnosis of hearing loss because in my head I was like, listen, if it's a hearing situation, he can just get fitted for hearing aids. He could get an implant. Like in my head, it was like more concrete and it was easier to digest. So they scheduled him for a follow-up hearing exam. He was a tiny bit older, but not by much. And this time the woman told me, she was like, I really think this could be a behavioral issue. And I knew, first of all, I don't think that's a good phrase for, describing someone who's autistic, but I knew what she meant immediately. And once again, I was very combative. Like, like my son is not autistic. This is clearly a hearing issue, even though you have a degree. So then they referred him to get what's called a sedated ABR, I believe, and it's basically a hearing test where I think they measure brain waves in response to sounds. He would be put under, so it would kind of give a definitive answer. And I will never forget this. My son and him took a walk because it's hard to wait, for a kid before surgery. So they're walking down the hall and the woman came to call him back, to get anesthesia. And I called his name and he looked right at me. And that's when I knew it wasn't his hearing and I knew that he was autistic. And so, like I figured, when he woke up, they said his hearing is normal, and they said he needed to follow up again and get evaluated, and he was diagnosed. I really wish that they educated, parents, who have a kid with a new diagnosis. I wish they educated them, um, in a less damning light. I feel like when your kid gets a diagnosis, you're given all this information of how how stigmatized everything is and how hard it's going to be and how like it really kind of depicts a life of suffering. And I'm not trying to like minimize symptoms maybe that are related to being autistic, that like even my son, like he has a hard time sometimes with boundaries, he has meltdowns, but there are traits that my son has because he's autistic, that I think are going to have make him excel in life. I really do. I know that some people would probably feel like it's kind of taboo or whatever to say like, I'm glad my son's autistic, but I really think it's going to help him in life because I think that his precision, his like, just I don't even know like how you would say it, just his ability to like divert all his energy and his attention into one task. Like I mean he's going to go a lot of places I think because of it, and I also think he has an awesome sense of humor because a little offbeat to his own drum. He plays drums. So yeah, I wish that when he first got diagnosed, that they didn't treat it like it was some horrible sentence to live a dependent life, with no independence and no, joy, because that's what they made it seem like.